When you're living on land, weather is often more an intellectual exercise than anything else. It might dictate what you choose to wear or if you decide to go to the park, but chances are your world does not rotate around wind direction and strength. When you're cruising, weather takes on a whole new level of importance. Hi, I'm Nika Waters, and welcome to the Boat Galley Podcast. Today, we're talking about weather. And yeah, you need it for more than just understanding what clothes you're going to wear.
Slow down, slow down.
This episode of the Boat Galley Podcast is sponsored by Rainman Watermakers and SeaTask. Rainman Watermakers are capable of producing up to 37 gallons of fresh, clean drinking water per hour from seawater. Portable and installed models are available, all with off-the-shelf parts. Configurations are available in AC, 12-volt DC, and even a gasoline system, with the new 2019 models being smaller, lighter, and quieter than ever. SeaTask is the premier U.S. facility for Rainman Watermakers. Visit them at www.seataskgroup.com to learn more. That's SeaTask Group, SeataskGroup.com. The day that I wrote this podcast episode, I was sitting in southern Vermont, and it was sleeting and icy. We were sitting inside, firing up the fireplace early. We decided that it wasn't a good day to go skiing, but my cousin still had to head home to Maryland. The weather had her looking and driving much more carefully, but she never ever thought about changing her plans. It's tempting when you're a new cruiser to think that that's how you can roll on the water also. Who cares? What's the big deal? You just go from here to there. It's not like you're going very far anyway. It might take a little bit longer, but sailing's always slower than driving anyway. I've been dealing with weather my whole life, and I've never let it stop me from doing what I want to. Why should I do that now? When you're cruising, weather takes on an entirely new level of importance. Maybe this story will help you understand why. We did a Chesapeake cruise a couple of years ago with our kids on board and the dog. We had been in Baltimore overnight. We were planning to cross the bay to go over to the eastern shore in St. Michael's. About a 45-mile trip, about 9 hours at our usual 5-knot pace. Weather, a front, was really supposed to come in right around 6. So we decided we were going to leave pretty promptly. We left the dock at 7 a.m., and sailed as much as we could, but when our speed dropped to 3 knots through the water, we did turn on the engine. The front was forecast to bring in some high winds and really not very nice chop, and we wanted to be in and anchored well ahead of it. Every time the wind came up enough to set the sails, we definitely did that, boosting the progress by as much as 2 knots sometimes. It felt like we were in a race against some unseen competitor, although the skies remained very clear. We were coming into the anchorage on the backside of St. Michael's on a gorgeous, gorgeous June afternoon, and we could see the skies getting progressively darker. Jeremy kept watching the radar. He adjusted the sails, nudged the throttle a little bit, and we all breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief when we put the anchor down with extra chain out to keep ourselves really anchored well in the squall, and the anchor held beautifully. And he looked at the sky and looked at the weather again on his phone. And he said, I think we've got about a half an hour, and I'm going to take the dog into shore. Dropped the dinghy. The dog was hanging over the front tubes the way she really loves to. And he was just idling, going really slowly in deference to nearby shores and the importance of paying attention to other boats in the anchorage as well. I decided I was going to hop in the water for a shower. We had a great time taking our shower. We hauled ourselves out, lathered up, jumped back in for the rinse. The clouds were getting darker. The sky was getting darker. And I was just pressurizing up our garden sprayer freshwater shower for our final rinse off when Jeremy started to come back, and I could hear him. He was racing the dinghy at full planing speed. Bell, down in the hull. It's coming fast, he yelled. Get below. We slid the companionway hatch closed, and we were cracking up as we went down. About 30 seconds after we got down below, the surge hit the boat, stretching out the chain, and the anchorage went from flat calm to bouncy in total seconds. We heeled over on the gusts. But all was fine, and we were happy and laughing down below, toweling off and getting dressed. We'd had our shower. We felt great. Boy, am I glad we were in when that hit, said B. I would really hate to be out in that. And here's the thing. When you're watching weather all the time, it's really, really important. You want to make sure that you're planning your passage to make sure as much as you can that you're not out in that. Because as we learned, and it wasn't the first time, weather that's forecast to come in at 6 might actually come in at 4. You never know. Some other reasons that weather is important when you're cruising are that you choose anchorages based on predicted winds. We actually had done that. Instead of going to the main anchorage in St. Michael's, we run around to the back entrance because of the way the winds were supposed to hit. An anchorage that's great in north winds can be totally untenable in south winds. I don't know what the main anchorage in St. Michael's was like when that squall came through, because it was pretty bad where we were and we were much more protected. Sometimes whether or not you can get into town can change depending on the wind and the waves. Launching the dink, getting into it, bouncing over the waves to get into town, needing to have foul weather gear for the ride. It's not just what clothes you wear that changes with the weather, it's whether you can do laundry. Because probably, like most of us, you're depending on clothesline time to dry the clothes. Another thing you may not think about when you're at home is that what you choose to cook can deeply depend on the weather. If it's 100 degrees and humid, making that spaghetti dinner might not be a great idea. You really want to add more heat and steam to the cabin? Weather when you're cruising is way more important than just whether you have to drive more slowly to get home after a vacation in Vermont. And the best part about after weather passes by is the sky when it's done. It's calm, it's pretty, and you breathe a nice big sigh of relief. I can't wait to see you out there. Thanks for listening, and thanks again to our sponsor, Rainman Watermakers and Desalination Systems. If you like the show, please be sure to subscribe in your podcast app. Just search for the Boat Galley Podcast. And reviews are always appreciated. Until next time, then.
Slow down.